visit a friend in Portugal tomorrow and heading back to Brazil.
Okay,
so
hold on. Let me just introduce the show again. So we're going back on live, a little unscheduled, but we have Wasserman, who we just finished an interview, and our friend David S., who we're getting to see for the first time. So David was just briefing on us on what's going on in Europe since he's currently there.
It's extremely expensive right now.
Mm-hmm.
Alarmingly expensive. I mean, the food is still wonderful, but it's alarmingly expensive. And there's a few other changes, which, again, we have to always be careful what we say when we're on any of these things. But, for example, if you go on Gran Via in Madrid or, say, Las Ramblas in Barcelona at night, it looks a heck of a lot more like 6th and Main in Los Angeles or down on Ipiranga in downtown Sao Paulo than it looks in Spain. That's not such a good thing. And, that comes on with all the accoutrements of drug dealing and all this other stuff. So whatever the government has done, I don't think that could be regarded as a compliment. While for the average Madrileño or Spaniard, apartments have become unaffordable. So, this track that the European governments has been going on is becoming awfully difficult for young people. And that's one of the reasons you're seeing all these terrible protests and Pali protests and every other protest is because of a tremendous anger that people cannot afford to advance the most beautiful places on earth. But if you can't advance in them, and as somebody was remarking, this is the 50th anniversary of the passing of El Caudillo in Spain. Well, everybody likes to say bad things about El Caudillo. Well, there was no income tax. Everybody could afford to buy a house. And it wasn't totalitarian, it was authoritarian, which is quite different. So there was a lot of leeway, and it was very, very well run through the families, through the technocrats, through officers. Well, today the taxes are unaffordable. Today nobody can afford to buy anything. So the question is, well, has it really improved? And you didn't have this wide range of street crime in the middle of the night that you have now.
Well, that's always my comeback. Anyone who wants to tell me how bad Putin is, I just simply say, tell me a time when life has been better for the average Russian.
Yeah.
And then I'll go to another thing. Okay. Today in Spain, and this came from the United States, it didn't come from Europe particularly, you have over 65,000 people in prison. In Franco's day, you only had 5,000 people in prison.
That's another point that I make, when comparing the czars to the Reds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and here's another thing. This year in Spain, and this is alarming for the West, and I mean, that's why you see all these different programs called Which Way, Western Man. Well, Spain barely had 300,000 births this year. This is unprecedented. And what it's going to end up doing is requiring unlimited amounts of migrants to come in, and it's going to kill the character completely. But what that also does is require massive surveillance. The first time I went to Spain was the year of Franco's death, 1975. There were no cameras. There was no RoboCops all over the place. Now you don't see so many RoboCops, you see more cameras. That didn't exist in Franco's days because the society ran itself. Kids could stay out all night without any risk. And they did stay out, and parents weren't afraid to let them stay out. So have things really improved under the financialized world? I mean, we really wonder. For a while, yes, because there was a short period where everybody could afford to buy a nice car. Well, I see a lot of less people driving now and a lot of less nice cars.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very short period. It's debatable, right?
Well, that's what made the EU very attractive for the first 5 years, is that because it was a devaluation of the German mark. So all of a sudden in Eastern Europe, you had this ridiculous amount of credit that was given out, and this was done purposely. They knew it would eventually enslave the place, and so everybody got their Mercedes or their Beamer or whatever. Now you don't see that anymore the same way. So if we go back to that time, and people don't really realize it was very patriotic, very nationalistic, but kids were free. Everybody had a house. Everybody could buy a house. There were no taxes, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There
were also no taxes in some of the other what they call authoritarian countries. And now you see, you don't have democracy. What you have is financialization. And I think you know that.
Yep.
And the United States is not any better.
To be honest, financialization is one of those concepts that I haven't integrated it into, I haven't conceptualized it very fully. So you could talk more about it, and it would go towards building my mental model of it.
I think what we're seeing, and I'm seeing this in lifetime in Argentina right now. I mean, so everybody's talking about freedom. Well, here's how Milei used freedom to get elected. Usually when you're a young person, unless you're a member of FEE, the Foundation for Economic Freedom, usually freedom refers to personal freedom, the ability to go to a disco, the ability not to be harassed by the police, the ability to smoke or to drink or whatever else you want to do. So during the pandemic, Argentina was one of the absolute worst countries in the world. That's why I wasn't there for it. And they kept everybody locked up. And it went on for almost 2 years, which was very, very long. So Milei, basically the young people were sick and tired that they couldn't go to a discotheque, that they couldn't go outside for years. In fact, people finally rioted at the end. And so when I met him the first time, he was talking about not about closing the central bank and not about freedom for corporations and for firing everybody and for selling off every asset and every manufacturing thing that there is. This is what happened in Greece, by the way. What was he talking about? He hated the cameras. He hated the closing of the discos. He hated that the mayor had closed all the parks at night to keep everybody out. Believe it or not, that's what he campaigned on. That's what a lot of young people voted for. Simultaneously, he promised to end the inflation in the central bank, but they've done more monetary expansion than ever. So, I mean, these are kind of the tricks. And even though I'm a lifelong registered libertarian, what I have found really since the Koch brother days is that the libertarian that these people have in mind is that JP Morgan and Elliott Capital and Goldman and BlackRock should basically be able to go in without any regulation whatsoever and have everything sold to them for very, very cheap, and that there are no national companies anymore. Yes, there's still a few, but it's amazing how many have closed. So what's the consequence in Argentina? It's extremely expensive now, but foreigners can buy apartments. But also 300,000 people have lost their jobs during the Milei period.
Well, let's go back to the fundamental meaning of the word financialization. It's a weak concept for me. It should be stronger, having spent all this time talking with you and with money. But I have to admit, it's not something I've internalized very clearly. So please, let's go back.
I haven't internalized it very well. Probably Ledge knows better. But I mean, basically, financialization is where you basically kill all social programs, you kill all manufacturing. And you're just looking for almost it's when Soros talks about the theory of reflexivity, okay, it's the idea of free flow of capital and efficient capital that basically conglomerates into a few big, huge corporations, something that Mussolini, by the way, incorporated, and that everything has a financial value to it. And wherever you can extract the best yield, no matter what, even if you decimate all the jobs, say in a country, but if it presents a better financial yield, you go with it. So that the only criterion is the financial yield and absolutely nothing else.
So how would you distinguish that, or maybe you don't distinguish that from corporatization?
Well, it's not much of a difference. The difference is, okay, everybody has a small corporation. I have a small corporation. But it is what it is. It's monopoly corporatization. It's not a manufacturing. It's financial holdings, such as the different groups of that you have with BlackRock and State Street and Blackstone and all these different things that they're holding companies. So a corporation might be like, I don't know, IBM. That's a corporation, right?
Yeah.
But that IBM, rather than being owned by IBM, is owned by these financial holding institutions.
Yeah. Okay, I think I understand now. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's the main difference. And once you concentrate, what you're doing is you're almost doing something, a capitalistic style, what the Soviet Union did. was basically to concentrate in a few bureaus all these corporations.
Fair enough, but with completely different priorities and objectives.
Right.
Yeah, well, but I mean, the thing is that I don't know that they're so efficient either. That is why nobody can afford to buy a house anymore.
Yeah, I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying that the Soviet consolidation
Mhm.
did not measure its success in stock market capitalization.
Mhm.
That's
No,
all.
not at all.
That's all.
But
I'm
it was very efficient, but it worked very well for the war effort. I don't think we can deny it.
Yeah, and so I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying that the current flavor of the day, then, if you will. I mean, it's the part of the conversation that you missed that we were having earlier was my view that that tyranny is a given in life, and that the founders of the American Constitution were trying to mitigate tyranny by pitting putative tyrants against each other. So the connection that I have in my mind to what we were just talking about with financialization is ultimately financialization is a form of tyranny, the way you're describing it.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives no angles. The problem with this type of financialization, because you have technology and because computers are so sophisticated and there's so unlimited amounts of capital, is that the only way that you have any wiggle room and not be a tyranny is by having inefficiency. I made my money always on the gray market.
Yeah.
With that inefficiency, people are allowed to live. So when you had, I mean, I'm biased because I made my money on blue markets and parallel markets, black markets, whatever, with currency and airline tickets, but people have a chance to breathe. So if you look at this horrible Christina government that they all come, but everybody made money. Now just a very few people at the very top are making all the money. So which one is better? Yes, this is more efficient, except that they're stealing like there's no tomorrow in Argentina, but nobody's making any money. So on paper, it's for shareholders. I guess for shareholders, it's better.
Well, it's like a thought bubble. It's something else we were discussing. It's an ideological bubble. It's a homogeneous mindset. Within that mindset, everything makes sense. Outside of it, none of it makes sense.
Well, if you take a look at Christina Kirchner at the time, the Kirchners never borrowed any money from the IMF. And as a matter of fact, the only person that ever paid the IMF off were the Kirchners. So, this is one of the reasons why I think nobody has a very adult approach. So if you go on to something like Facebook doesn't really have spaces. I mean, they said they were going to do something with Threads, but it really didn't happen. It's just people showing off or whatever. But if you go onto the spaces, which is interesting, it's almost the very same type of tribalism that you have in these different Edward Bernays type systems where all these people are basically screaming at each other, calling each other names. But nobody's getting richer, except maybe the sponsors of the programs. And that's always been done. So one of the things in the Middle East, and this is one of the reasons why I've turned very much against the Israeli government right now, against Bibi, because I'm very angry about how he's handled Syria. But one of the things that goes back to Richard Nixon and what he told Golda Meir when she said, our priority, our sine qua non, is that Israel have absolute security, to which he answered, well, but as the Secretary of State of the United States, it means everybody else has absolute insecurity, and we have to find a balance somewhere in the middle. I think,
David, but don't you know what you did by criticizing Israel? You're anti-Semitic. I've been having to deal with that all week long.
You do not know how many spaces I've been thrown off of because I've turned against the way Netanyahu. Syria is my particular interest. I'm doing stuff there, and I'm just saying that to be a bully. I mean, look, whether it's your fault, whether it's not your fault, whether it was done as part of a regime change against you, the Netanyahu government, October 7th happened on Netanyahu's watch. And if somebody like me knew it was going to happen, anybody knew, and the McCours knew, and everybody else knew, nobody knew that basis, if it was allowed, even if that was allowed to happen as part of the regime change operation. You see, it happened on your watch. And so now you're bullying Syria and taking it out on Syria. And, and now you get into this fight with MBS in Saudi Arabia. of course he has to say you're going to have a pathway to some kind of a Palestinian construct. If he doesn't do that, the same thing will happen to him that happened to Anwar Sadat,
Yeah.
or to King Abdullah in 1951. And so what he's doing is, yes, Israel has a certain amount of maximalism. Israel only has one challenger in the region, and that's Turkey. There is no other challenger. And yet the strange thing is the trade between Turkey and Israel is at an all-time high. So, yes, you are not allowed to criticize Netanyahu. And then, of course, I'm supporting Bennett now, even though I can't stand Lapid. And okay, you're a socialist, you're a leftist, no, it's a matter of which way do you move forward.
Oh, well, this is the totalizing. First, the totalizing labels is a huge disservice to everybody. I mean, it's we were talking earlier about how labels used to have specific semantic content to them. So you could be a liberal and a conservative, because the opposite of liberal is not conservative. The opposite of liberal is collectivist. And so. Because labels used to have semantic meanings, you could hold political opinions and label them. Now it's impossible, because every label simply means you are someone awful.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I was doing well for a while. I got a little over 5,000 followers, which I was impressed I got that far. But now I'm very, very unpopular because, he's for a while I was a Putin shill. Now I'm an Arab lover, or it's just.
It's the fate of the intellectually honest person. I've done a couple of nonprofit service gigs in my life, and the fate of any truly disinterested party is to be equally accused of malfeasance by all sides.
Yeah.
I do get accused by all sides, but for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. Everybody is in complete tribalism right now. Yeah. And it's the same thing in Europe. If you just look today, if you went on Twitter today, you would have seen this barrage against President Trump over the latest agreement for Zelensky. Well, there was an article published just yesterday in the Occidental Observer, which most Jews will never read, by some guy. And of course, he tries to blame the Jews and all that, probably some truth to it. But he's saying, look, Zelensky is so corrupt. He didn't run as a corrupt person, okay? He's a very good actor, and guess who liked his acting the best? He used to perform for Putin on December 31st. You can see the videos. They're still on YouTube. They've never been taken down. But everything is so corrupt over there, and so ridiculously corrupt. And there's no way to put an end to it. But this is where actually Gaza and Ukraine are linked. Gaza was the biggest consistent laundering operation for 20, 30 years until it got challenged by Ukraine. And Ukraine has been one of the biggest laundromats, except that Gaza was UN-oriented and Ukraine had other backers, including the Biden family and others. But the amount of kleptocracy that takes place. And so the idea is that you see now all these Americans and Brits saying Ukrainians have to fight for their freedom. So basically, what I'm telling you to do is go get yourself killed so we can take over the Black Sea and none of them even think of that. Just Russia invaded and all that. I said, well, Russia did nothing different than Israel did in 1967. They took a preemptive strike.
Don't forget Iraq. That was the template for Ukraine.
Well, and to me, wait a moment. Iraq had, in my personal opinion, and I'm very unpopular saying this, Iraq had every single right to go into Kuwait. Not only did they get taxed.
I'm not disputing. I'm just saying that from a point of view of money laundering, Iraq was the template for Ukraine.
Oh, it was a huge line, but look, Iraq, and I had been there once in 1978. Of all the countries in the Middle East, by far Iraq was the most advanced, the most beautiful, much more than Egypt. Yes, Egypt, Lebanon, women had rights, nobody wore a veil. But
how much money went missing in the invasion of Iraq?
In trillions and trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
The movie, I only think of myself as an idiot when you think about that. What was that movie about the two kids that started taking bids?
The arms. It's about these two guys it's based on a real story. These two guys get into gun running. And they get a no-bid contract to supply a bunch of Soviet-made ammunition. And the guy goes in and he offers his bid. And he says, the one guy says to him, who is from the U.S. government is like, well, we're taking you because you offered the lowest bid. And he's like, well, what normally do you take? And they cut screen, and the kid's pounding his head against a locker because he so underbid what they normally would have given him. He got like.
But here's the problem. Here is the problem: is that in those days, you see, they would fund you and finance you. Today, you can't take those bids because they expect you to fund things.
Yeah.
First, in that time, they were totally disorganized. So you put together these deals, and then you would send, I guess, whatever the pro forma invoice or whatever, and they would actually fund you. Now, whether it was getting pro-Soviet, I can tell you that in the early '90s, when I was fooling around doing my, tickets with the construction and buying tickets in Poland and Italy and everywhere else, I told you I'm in a hotel lobby. People are going, this guy from One Travel down in Atlanta said, well, since you love all these funny countries, you were in the wrong place. For $40,000 in Kazakhstan, you could charter an old Soviet plane and start ferrying all sorts of stuff to Africa. People made fortunes in that. That was the moment to make money.
Yeah. Sadly, I missed that, but I really wanted to do stuff like that when I was younger.
No, and imagine that you can take a cargo plane for $40,000, wet lease, down to Africa and back. I mean, that was just a mint of money to be made, and you didn't have the regulation at the time.
Mm.
So all these things, whether it's not, should I tell everybody?
Sorry, I was going to say my memory of that same time was a slightly different one. It was all the market mamas lining up in De Gaulle Airport with their booty on their heads, lining up to get to board the plane to bring it all back.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear that.
I said my memory of that time, related but different, was was being in De Gaulle with all the market mamas. Doing their monthly supply run with all their booty piled up on their heads, waiting in line to check in.
To get the gold?
Yeah, well, no, they'd go, they'd fly into De Gaulle, and they would, buy all their goods, and then they'd bring them back on the passenger flight. They'd bring their haul back with them and sell them in the markets. Remember those? The market mamas?
Yeah.
The market what?
Mama.
I'm still not hearing you because there's some kids in the background. Say again.
The market mamas.
The market mamas. I think that went on in Brazil too, where they were just buying stuff very cheap all over the place and bringing them back.
Yeah. So that's my memory of that same time.
I mean, that was a time when actually I started going to Brazil, and this friend of mine, she worked for me for a while. She said, we should just organize shopping stuff for me because the gray market was so good. Now they've closed every loophole. Again, here's your financialization. Those loopholes have closed. The early 1990s, when absolutely every idiot in the world could make money. There was nobody that could not make money at that time.
It's more than a grain of truth in that.
Yeah.
And so,
so I couldn't make money.
Well, I mean, as I say, going back to the whole Franco period and all that, yes, I mean, for the average person, things were much better in that time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, that worked to keep me honest. I mean, criminality had no appeal for me because my attitude was like, well, I can make that money legally.
Hardly anybody went to jail because people policed themselves.
Yeah.
And also, you didn't have endless laws. There was no law that you go to jail for smoking. There was no law that you couldn't drink in the street. There was no law. The laws were only essential laws.
Yep.
So, we come back to this thing today with Ukraine. There's no discussion on social media. It's far worse than the Israel-Arab thing, what I'm seeing today. And people are
it's not only is it forgotten, but it's meant to be forgotten because we lost.
Well, there was never anything to win with in Ukraine in the first place. I mean, my account.
True enough.
Yeah, I mean, initially, from what I could tell, the Ukrainians were planning on putting down the Donbass once and for all. That was kind of their goal. They weren't going to be, they knew they couldn't take Crimea despite all of their things. They just thought they were going to crush them. And initially, I just thought when the Russians, I heard the word Russian invasion, I'm like, oh, the Russians have moved maybe 50,000 troops in there, declared a protectorate. And Ukraine, what are you going to do now? Kind of like what they did with Georgia, right? Where they have peacekeeping troops in Eastern Georgia.
It was 50,000 troops, only it wasn't a police action. It was a political action.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that we didn't discuss is how absolutely nobody in the Western media picked up on the fact that the first incursion was a political action, and that Putin explicitly
Well,
said,
and the war was over. The war was
Yeah.
over in March.
that's right,
And
Putin explicitly said, well, I guess it's going to be a military matter now.
Yeah.
well, this is what I don't really understand is that none of the pundits and analysts simply said the most obvious thing, knowing at British history. For the British, I mean, for the Europeans, they need to have Keynesianism, military Keynesianism, in another war. They've spent themselves but for the British, it's simply Crimea War 2. It's Crimea 2. There was no intention. They have an obsession about the near enemy, the far enemy, the Mackinder stuff. There was nothing there, or they never would have. No average, and this is Andrei Bieletsky. We've talked about this on Spaces. No average Ukrainian would have ever voted for a government like this or been a part of it. And as Bieletsky said, it's less than 1% that are not nationalists. I'm a nationalist, hyper nationalists.
Yeah.
And less than 1% took over, but with the enormous purse of both the United States under, I call it the British United States under the Obama people, and the neocons, the neocon Obama people, and Britain. And then the EU, basically, which are still poodles of the state, said, look, we're broke. The pandemic didn't give us the Euro bonds, so now we have this, and we're going to finance ourselves with this. It had nothing to do with logic whatsoever. Russia never was a threat to anything.
Excuse me, guys. I'll be right back in a second.
Yeah, no problem. I'm probably taking off in about 10 minutes, but it gives me a chance to talk to Dave. So me and Wasserman are talking about doing more of these type talks on my channel. I have 500 subscribers here. And when we did our initial show, we had 2 people watching, and I'm hoping to grow on that. I'm thinking of bringing on Tom and Longo and making that kind of a breakout show for us if you're interested in getting involved in that.
Tom knows me now. I mean, I did something with Halsey English with him.
Yeah.
Halsey and I have very differing views on one subject. We're both very, very pro-Israel and both America first. And I actually turned Halsey onto E.M. Burlingame, and so they did a space that I got to be a co-host with E.M. Burlingame. And
I think I was listening to that.
What?
I think I listened to that.
And I surprised Tom by telling him something, because he's surrounded by people like Alex Craner, that's surrounded by Mersheimer, who I used to really, really, really like Mersheimer, but I've come to the conclusion that as much as I like him, he really is a committed anti-Semite at this point, and it just is what it is. But and I haven't been listening to Tom, even though I'm subscribing to him. I haven't been listening the last few weeks. I should, because he always comes up. But I do like it when he gets Burlingame on, when he gets Craner on, when he gets Halsey English on. Halsey gets along very well with him, and Halsey is the only Jewish voice that Tom has, but that's better than everybody else. So if you were listening in that space, I said, look, all you guys that you're surrounded with, even at the Duran and everywhere else, simply want to forget that Russia and Israel have very close relations because of demographics.
Oh, yeah.
And also because both countries have a Muslim problem or an Islamic problem. And well, that's a good point. And I said to myself, well, okay, fine. I mean, I said, look, when Russia left Syria, they entrusted the bases to the Israelis, and he never thought of that. And so this is the problem with people like Alex Craner. They are so focused, either it's the British or the people they're surrounded by, that they can't think out of their box at all. Tom is willing to do that. That's why I'm glad he has Halsey. That's why I'm glad he has Halsey English there. Yeah. Halsey is pretty good, I must say. He's doing more stuff now with Sean Newman and these people up in, I guess they're in, are they in Edmonton or in Calgary? I'm not sure where they are.
Yeah, no, he's up in Edmonton. Edmonton, I'm pretty sure.
But one of the things he does,
which, before we go off on a tangent, is this a good time for you? Because it works well for me and Wasserman.
Yeah, well, no, I'm willing to do more of these. One of the things that Tom is willing to do, though, he is willing to listen to other opinions, which most of the podcasters, the Duran at least, I have to give them credit, they haven't fallen into the sloganeering like everybody else. They dance around it because the people that pay their bills are real Jew and Israel haters. It just is, because I read the letters. But they have been very dignified, but the other people have gone just completely terrible. Napolitano and Nima and Redacted. I'm particularly aghast at the way Redacted has gone. And these are supposed to be professionals. But like Andrew Korobko told me, at the end of the day, they all need to get their bills paid. And if you have children, you especially need to pay your bills. So you have to end up tailoring not an intellectual conversation such as the Hudson Institute would have, because everybody's bills are getting paid, but to keep people coming there and keep subscribing. So anyway, I'd like to.
Judge, I still occasionally watch The Judge, but I got pissed off one day when he brought someone on to talk about the Russiagate scandal and the origins. It was Aaron Mate, and then they spent the first 20 minutes of his 30-minute show talking about Israel. It's
He's become a rabid
and you're going to waste my time. Because I'm only here for the
ever since he was on Napolitano, he's become a rabbit. The only person I watch once a week, even though I don't agree with him, I do watch Alistair Crook because I like his style and I like what he says. But he was good at the beginning, Napolitano, until the Gaza war. But now it's just, look, I'm not Catholic. I have no right to say anything. I'm probably one of the only Jewish people you will meet that's very opposed to Vatican II as a classical pianist, and someone that would like to see the Roman language or the Latin language respected. And I don't particularly like seeing another religion going into rap masses, funk masses, and street masses or whatever. But I think that Napolitano is a traditionalist, a little bit like the husband that Candace Owens married, that absolutely hates Vatican II, as much as I do, but for different reasons. And he's just let it all out. And he's very, very influenced by, and it's too bad because he is respected in Russia, but Russia will respect anybody that has a large following that will show stuff about Russia. Anyway, I hope that Trump can, he always flip-flops. I hope Trump can force something through fairly soon.
Yeah,
but I think
it looks like this is the real deal now. For one, I have a friend who is one of JD Vance's pollsters, and he's told them what's been going on, and Vance is the one sane voice in the cabinet, and it's like they're recently radically changed their strategy, and they're doing the long-form podcast again. They sent out, Lee Zeldin was on Patrick Bet-David on Friday for 2 hours. It was not a short thing. It was they know that they have a messaging problem. They thought they were doing so well on this stuff, and those midterms, or that the New Jersey elections scared the crap out of them. There are Republicans who were being told that if we have to send Trump a message, I like you, I really want to vote for you, but this guy made a whole bunch of promises and he's not delivering. So that he needs to start delivering on some of these core issues. Ukraine's the one he's going for first. Well, and he's going to eat the bullet, but the people who are going to be mad at him are going to be not around anymore. Like most of these boomers are going to be dead in 20 years, right?
The problem that I have, however, I've got two problems. Number one, now from a pro-Israeli standpoint, this time the Arabs were very, very smart, unlike in the past. And one of the reasons why Laura Loomer, and I do not like Laura Loomer for what she did, had Sami Hamdi arrested and deported, was he hit on the one wrong nerve that the entire Jewish community can't understand that has changed. That this was very well thought out. Hamas is, what you see as internal Hamas is not Hamas. Hamas is number one of the best public relations people that understands media as well as Edward Bernays ever understood it. It's the first Arab group that can connect with the American public. Yeah. That's the first thing everybody forgets. They have a large backing from Qatar, which helps, but they've studied. These are guys that they're also one of the biggest money laundering organizations. And so what they've done is they've learned how to script Christianity, script America first. They understand the same thing I do in Europe, which is nobody has any money, and so they accentuate all this money that really doesn't go to Israel, but they say is going to Israel, and then they show these paper mache dolls and whatever, and they know when to do real photos, when to do, but they have organized, they've taken the America First crowd, which used to be pro-Israel, and a lot of the Christians, and they've been working on something called substitution theology or replacement theology for a long time. This was thought out of for years and years and years.
There's also another thing that's also happening that I'm seeing, because I didn't know what Schofield was. And then people told me, and I'm like, this is heresy to mainline Christianity, which I am. And all these young people who are following people like Charlie Kirk and all these guys have been having a religious conversion to mainline Christianity. And what they're being told by their parents, who are from the moral majority that was captured, made an alliance with Israel back in the 80s, and that's perfectly fine to me. Though apparently my pointing this out makes me an anti-Semite. But is like, I'm like, your strategy is no longer working, Israel. You're going to have to change. And they're like,
It's not working. It's not working.
Yeah.
It's not working. And now, I favor living in South America. Usually when you have less money, that's what you do. And the Arabs have been just wonderful with harnessing the replacement theology. But replacement and substitution theology has been with the Lutherans and the Episcopalians for the longest period of time. But remember, you do have Arab Christians. Now, people forget that you have three Romes, right? You have Rome, you have Russian Rome, and then you have Constantinople and Middle Eastern Rome. So, there's always been a clash between Rome and the Jewish world at different times, and now it's been harnessed. And so what Israel has done is they've done very well with the evangelicals. They have never done well with the Catholics. And as a matter of fact, I think this whole thing of getting rid of the Roman language, the Latin language, hasn't helped. So they have not done well in the Catholic world. They have not done well in the Lutheran world. And, basically Israel's greatest strength has come from Christianity. And so if you want to look at facts on the ground, well, okay, in Bethlehem, 80% used to be Christian. Now it's 4%. And you have 190,000 Christians that have moved into Nazareth and into Israel, and it's growing and growing. But that's not what they talk about. They pick a guy like Munathir Isaac, and Israel has no idea what they're doing. They're not connecting with the Christians because they're talking to them, not with them.
Yeah.
And they're not being effective. There's many things they could do to fight back, but they absolutely is me, and they're getting absolutely nowhere. And
in the last 60 days, Israel dropped 20 points amongst Americans. In 2 months, they lost because of this ridiculous campaign of just calling everyone an anti-Semite for criticizing them. And it's just
to fight it.
Yeah.
And there's no way to fight. They are no good. The Arabs know. They don't talk. They want to show. Okay, what Hamas did, what the Arabs did, was very smart. By showing all these so-called babies at Gaza, 80% of which were false photos and silly photos, but they have to be some real ones too. You don't have something real. But what did they do? Paper mache dolls. And so I was saying to myself, but why are they using so many AI photos? And I finally figured out what Bernays and Goebbels used to say: effective propaganda and ineffective. And so they've learned that sometimes you can show something that's an artificial intelligence kid, and it's more effective than showing a real one. Now, and that takes study. That takes really work. You have to test this constantly to see what's going on. And Israel has not reaching out. There are all sorts of calls for Mike Huckabee to resign. And remember that the evangelical
with an arch traitor of the United States, a man who gave nuclear secrets to Israel, who traded it to the Soviet Union. I get it. That makes him a hero in Israel, but it's like he without clearing that with the White House.
Who did he meet with? I'm trying to remember.
Pollard.
Oh, Jonathan Pollard.
Yeah,
I like Jonathan Pollard. I mean, he's
but Americans don't.
No, he's very nationalist, and he suggests things. If you ever watch his YouTube channels, which come on once in a while, that would make your hair spin. I mean, he is like nationalist, as if they're
right now.
And for him to meet at the embassy with Pollard, for him was a big risk, because Pollard is considered by most mainstream Americans that even know the name, most don't even know, is a complete traitor.
Yep.
And I like him personally. I think he's great, but I have a right to like him. All right. The average American.
It's just a matter of like, you're Israeli living overseas. You can look at one man's hero as another man's traitor, right?
I'm American first and Israel second. I took the I took the citizenship because I thought, well, why not? I believe in 2 and 3 passports. I've always believed in Plan Bs. I still do. But I can see that Huckabee took a great risk meeting with. On the other hand, this whole idea that Trump is washed up because of Tucker Carlson and all that, that's also nonsense. Trump is a lot more sophisticated than we think he is. His media group is very sophisticated. And the Democrats may win some of the midterms, but don't think for 1 minute that Trump is washed out.
Yeah. And with that note, I got to get going. But
Oh, yeah, I do have one more thing I want to bring up to you, and this is very, very concerning to me. All right. But notice that when Trump went to Malaysia, he met with Lula, and Lula's a thug, but he kind of charmed him. Anybody can charm stuff. So Trump tuned down the sanctions, and now they've thrown Bolsonaro, 70 years old and very bad health, into prison. And Trump is getting some very, very bad reputation with the Patriots because he will not do anything against the Brazilian government. So while everybody is talking about Cuba, I would say Brazil is probably even more complicated and more risky than Venezuela by far.
Yeah.
So maybe we can discuss that.
Yeah, why don't we do that next time we get together? I'll put something out in the next couple of days. I want to do something else for my channel tomorrow, but yeah, we'll definitely meet up and we'll see you guys. It was great finally getting to interact with you.
Yes, yes.
This format as opposed to shouting over the phone.
Well, that's all everybody does is shout. I'll try the next time not to be in a hotel lobby, so it's a little more.
Although I must admit, David, in terms of signal clarity, maybe the hotel lobby is a place where you should always be.
Well, where I live in Buenos Aires is a concrete building. If I go in the office, it's okay. I don't have any problems. But no, you did bring that up, didn't you? Yeah, that Pollard thing was a mistake. But I don't write off Trump at all.
No. He's like the what was Bismarck said. God bless his fools, drunks in the United States of America. And Trump falls into that category.
Well, if there's one thing Trump does well, is keeping people guessing. I think anybody who believes that they know for sure what he's doing or where he's going or what he thinks is so sadly mistaken that it's pathetic. He plays his cards close to the chest, which is a big difference. People aren't used to that anymore, and he deliberately misleads people as to what he's up to and why he's up to it, for very good reason. And so he's very effective at it. It's pretty much impossible to know what he's going to do next or why.
Yep. And with that note, I do really have to go. So those who are watching at home and you want to see more of this, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you on the coming days. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Nice to see you, David.